I think we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, we have two great speakers with us today, and we'll be going over school food policy. So Abby, I could pass it over to you if you want to quickly introduce yourself, and then Janet, if you could do the same. And then Abby, you could get started with your presentation. Apprentices, if you could put your name as well as your district in the chat, just so our speakers know where everyone's coming from, that'd be great. But Abby, I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Halprin with the Center for Eco-Literacy.
Okay, well, I'm Jan Popendick, professor retired from Hunter College at the City University of New York, and I'm the author of Free for All, Fixing School Food in America, along with some other food policy books.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, Abby, I know you are going to get us started talking a little bit about California Free Meals for All, so I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Erica, and love the intros in the chat. It's so great to see where you all are coming from. I'm Abby Halprin. I'm the Senior Policy and Evaluation Manager at the Center for Eco-Literacy, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. So in our time together, I'd like to introduce you briefly to the Center for Eco-Literacy and our work on the School Meals for All campaign. And the most important thing that you can learn from this presentation is how school nutrition professionals like you are making a difference in shaping state policy. These state policies make a big difference in determining what's possible on the ground in your school district, dictating how much funding school nutrition departments have to prepare school meals and which students have access to those meals. For those of you who don't know us, the Center for Eco-Literacy is a nonprofit based in California celebrating 30 years of systems change work in TK through 12 education and school food. We are reimagining school food as a pathway for learning and change. We do this work in partnership with over 160 school districts across the state that participate in our California Food for California Kids initiative. These districts serve over 2.4 million students and 42% of the 1 billion meals served in the state. California Food for California Kids inspires schools to serve fresh, locally sourced meals and engage students in the connections between food, culture, health, and the environment. Our initiative provides an array of programs, resources, and inspiration for school nutrition professionals, educators, and school communities. One of the very best parts about my job is working with school nutrition professionals like you all over the state who are part of the California Food for California Kids Network to inform and shape our policy work. Juliana kindly shared the list of school districts working with the Chef Ann Foundation. And I was happy to see that 22 of your districts are already part of the California Food for California Kids Network. It's really no surprise to see the overlap with the school districts who are interested in the Chef Ann Foundation's Healthy School Food Pathways program, because we all share a commitment to more freshly prepared school meals. If you don't see your district on this list, please consider joining our free network to advocate with us, gain resources, and peer-to-peer support to serve more freshly prepared and locally grown school meals. Note that this application is intended for your school district's food service director, and I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. It's free to join. So that was a little bit about us. Now, how did California become the first state in the nation to have universal meals? I'd like to share a little bit about how we got here and our not so secret ingredient of success, the advocacy of school nutrition professionals like you. As those of you who were in school food at the time know better than anyone, and I'm curious, maybe we can see like a thumbs up emoji or something from folks who were there during the pandemic. At the height of it, school food professionals rallied heroically. You guys met so many challenges and served entire school communities every week, changing the entire school food operations over one weekend, which was just incredible to see. But also part of that was that the COVID pandemic illuminated what many of us in school nutrition already knew about the need in our communities. The media covered the lines of cars to pick up meals at schools and food banks. And federal waivers allowed all schools nationwide to provide free school meals for students. These waivers demonstrated that it was possible to feed all kids and an effective tool to reduce childhood hunger because school meals meet kids where they are 5 days a week at school. Unfortunately, these federal waivers ended in June of 2022, and many states went back to charging some students for meals. Our coalition seized the moment, helped by a flush state budget, to advocate for school meals for all in 2021. The Center for Eco-Literacy was one of the original co-sponsors of Senator Skinner's 2021 School Meals for All bill, along with the California Association of Food Banks, the Office of Kat Taylor, and Next Gen California. We built a coalition of over 200 organizations, and some of the districts here today signed on to support. This broad coalition, including labor, agriculture, healthcare, food banks, and dozens of school districts, is a testament to the overwhelming support for school meals for all. The testimonies that we heard from school nutrition directors across the state help make this come alive for legislators and help make the case that students should not pay for meals. Here's just one example of a moving quote from former food service director Dominic at Mount Diablo. He said, "Students can't learn on an empty stomach. If you don't continue universal feeding, you will not only have economic devastation, but you will hurt the farmers, ranchers, and the schools that depend on them. It will have a snowball effect." He describes how school meals impact not only student well-being and academic success, but an entire community of people whose livelihoods depend on providing food for our students. Former food service director Stephanie Bruce from Palm Springs testified in front of the California legislature about the importance of school meals for all and how her school nurse used to have 17 students in his office every day simply because they were hungry. Here's a testimony from food service director Erin Primer at San Luis Coastal about the single mother who called in tears when she learned that she didn't qualify for free or reduced price meals because she made just a few $100s over the annual income limit. It was featured in the New York Times. It's testimonies like these, the advocacy of school nutrition folks, that made school meals for all a reality. I want to pause here for a second. I didn't see many of you, but maybe a few. But for those of you who were in school food prior to the pandemic, what changes have you noticed now that we have universal meals? What difference has it made for your students and your community? Feel free to put your answer in the chat or come off mute to share with the group. More participation. Thanks, Ashley. Yes, and we've seen participation continue to increase since the program has passed. More students eating breakfast. Yes, that's been huge. More participation. Thanks, Jessica. We have more attendance on our cafeteria. Oh, more attendance in our cafeteria. So you have more people, more students showing up for meals.
I think the stigma with free lunches and breakfast is kind of going away because everybody's free. Anytime you're hungry, you can go and get something to eat.
Absolutely. And we've actually seen, there was a study that just came out that found that participation and food insecurity went up even for students who already qualified for those free or reduced price meals. And that, I think, is real evidence of how the stigma has gone away, because now it's not just something that's, for the poor kids, it's something that's for everyone. And that's been so important in changing the culture around school meals. Less shame. Yes, thanks, Amanda. Oh, these are such great responses. Thank you. So when School Meals for All passed in 2021, California became the first state in the nation to permanently guarantee all students with a free lunch and breakfast. And California led the way. Now, 8 other states in green have followed suit to make sure their students can eat for free. And in yellow here, you can see the states that currently have active campaigns. So this is a nationwide movement. Oh, I love this. In my high school, we serve 520 more lunches every day. Wow, that's 520 more students who are getting nourished at school. That's incredible. Thank you. So now that we've talked a little bit about how the landmark School Meals for All policy passed thanks to partnerships and the incredible advocacy from the school nutrition community, I want to share a little bit about what's changed since then. So based on inputs from the school nutrition community, every year we advocate for state policies to support your success, including School Meals for All, Kitchen Infrastructure and Training, which we call KIT, and Farm to School. This year, we were focused on protecting School Meals for All during a difficult budget deficit for the state and looking at these supports. So I'm just going to drop a link in the chat that has more details on our advocacy priorities for 2025. But how do we do this? How do we advocate for your success for these programs? We show up a lot. So our team participated in 43 legislative meetings and counting to date in 2025. We're engaging students and school nutrition professionals in some of these. And advocacy activities range broadly based on people's interests, passion, availability. So we do virtual and in-person meetings with policymakers, site visits where the policymakers come out and visit a school, customized letters, providing public comment at budget hearings. Over 115 organizations signed on to support the 2025 School Meals for All effort, including dozens of districts again. But this also means that you are supported by organizations across the state. And we were successful. The state fully funded School Meals for All this year, contributing about $1.9 billion to child nutrition programs, which includes a state meal reimbursement that's over $1 per meal for the first time. Thanks to this policy and your hard work, the state now estimates that about 1 billion school meals will be served this current school year. 1 billion. The 2025 budget also included $145 million for a new third round of the Kitchen Infrastructure and Training Fund and $25 million for Farm to School. And I've detailed all of the results from the state budget and what it means for school nutrition programs there in the link if anyone's interested in a few of the details. Just so you get a picture of this, here's what a lobby day looked like back in March of 2024 when 14 school nutrition professionals provided public comment at a critical hearing in support of School Meals for All. On the right, you can see Rima Ramirez. She's a former Chef Ann Foundation Fellow and kitchen manager at Twin Rivers. And she said she was providing public comment on, in her words, behalf of the lunch ladies. Many of our California legislators are still learning the basics of how school food works. They often know as much about school food as the other parents in your district. There is no better way to explain school food than seeing your programs in action. Once policymakers understand the complexities, the effort, and the love that goes into preparing school food, they become better advocates for school food issues. These site visits can also be a great way to build internal district support for your program, inviting school board members, superintendents, and other leadership to see the incredible impacts that your program is having. Here are some past visits. Senator Steve Padilla and Senator Ashby visited Sweetwater and Natomas, and first partner Jennifer Sybil Newsom and Senator Skinner both attended a training at CIA with San Luis Coastal and other districts. I want to share this powerful quote from a student at Garden Grove Unified because it's testimonials like these that demonstrate the impact of the program for our policymakers. He said, "School Meals for All means eating more than once a day. It means not worrying about whether or not I have enough money to eat for the week." The Center for Eco-Literacy amplifies testimonials like these on our websites and on social media. All of this is what makes a difference in securing funding for School Meals for All. So right now, we're at the beginning of our advocacy for 2026 on School Meals for All, kitchen infrastructure and training, and farm to school programs. And I'd love to take a minute to hear from you. What do you want our state policymakers to know about your school meal program? Please share any ideas you have in the chat or feel free to come off mute. Better performance in school. Absolutely. There is so much research out there that when kids are well nourished, they learn better, they perform better academically. And it's no surprise, how well would you do your job if you hadn't had anything to eat that
Están
day?
más contentos los niños que se alimentan bien, juegan más tranquilos y despreocupados.
Thank you.
And sorry, we don't have Juliana on the call, so let me ask our interpreter if she could interpret.
Hi,
Dylan's
I'm
message.
actually here.
Oh, you are here? Okay, great.
Yeah,
Juliana, can you help interpret?
So,
Hi, Juliana.
hola. She was just saying that
Hola.
like they're able to focus more. So she's like getting to see the students be in like a better state and be able to engage more and like be in a place to absorb.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Less food insecurity. Thank you, Sarah.
De nada. Sí.
I think the main thing is that the state policy again is to make the kids more secure, and at our school I think we're just kind of making more healthier foods for the children, and the overall mental health of the kids are better if they have breakfast, lunch, and we have supper. I just think it's a whole bunch of things that they need to realize that our kids need.
I love that mental health piece that you picked up on there, right? Because food insecurity and being hungry is not just about the hunger, but it's about all the worry and anxiety that comes with that. And I've heard so many students tell us like, oh, when I didn't have to worry, when I didn't have to think about where my next meal was coming from, I could stop and focus on the learning at school, right? And so that's such an important piece. Thank you. Oh, I'm seeing such great things in the chat. Different foods, fruits and vegetables. Why there should be universal meals across all states. Yes, Amanda. Yes. We've started to make a lot of new recipes from scratch. The kids love it. We need more funding for healthier food, more fresh fruit and vegetables. Absolutely. More scratch cooking has increased our participation. What a great feedback loop. Isn't that wonderful, right? When you're able to invest more in scratch and then more students join. Oh, thanks, Cassandra. Oh, bulk milk, amazing. Connections to local farmers. Oh, this is such great work. You guys are amazing. You're doing it. You're feeding the kids. You're making connections to community. This is such great things to hear. And I absolutely agree that these are things our policymakers need to know. Thank you.
It would be great if you could capture those responses in the chat and send them around. I know I would be really happy to have them.
Oh yeah, for sure. We when we record the call, it will save the chat as well. So that's a great idea, Janet. Thank you.
Partnerships. Yes. Amazing. Well, I think we have a little bit of time for questions. It's been so fun already talking to you guys and hearing your ideas and what's changed because of School Meals for All in your districts. Yeah, would love any questions you all have for me. And I'm also putting my email here if you ever want to reach out about California school food policy issues. Mm.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for my unmute button. Any questions for Abby today? I do see there's so many great comments coming in through the chat. I'm trying to heart all of them, but they're coming in so quickly. I'm having I'm keeping up, but it's great to see so many people participating and sharing about their ideas. So, any questions for Abby? Give it just a little bit longer.
Puedo decirle que estoy muy contenta de participar en el programa porque están haciendo un gran trabajo, maravilloso. Los felicito de veras. Este, sigan siempre así, es lo que les puedo desear.
Gracias, Domitila. She wanted to share that she is like really enjoying the program and is happy with everything and just wanted to thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
That is great. And then it looks like we have a question from Mark in the chat. I've heard from one of the lead cooks at a school here. He commented that he sees more waste since the food became free. Have you seen this in other places?
Mm. This is a really, really interesting question. The thing, I have many thoughts about food waste, but I think the first place that food waste and school meals for all gets misunderstood is we think about total waste and we think about per kid waste. And I don't think we've actually seen a lot of changes in the waste per student, but we just have a lot more kids participating now. And so when you have more kids participating, even if the waste per student doesn't change, you're going to see some more waste overall. So I think that's sort of one hang up. And we've actually had a number of policymakers who have used school meal waste to argue that we should take away funding for school meals for all. And so it becomes this really dangerous thing. And the first thing I want to say is like, how wonderful that we're talking about food waste instead of hungry kids, right? How wonderful that that's the problem we're trying to solve today. What a better problem to be solving. And there are a lot of ways we can think about food waste. And one of the things that I like to talk about when we start talking about food waste is time to eat, because we know far too few of our students have enough time to finish the meal that they're given. And when you have, we did a survey last year with a bunch of the districts in our network, and they told us that 28% of elementary school students had between 5 and 9 minutes to eat their meal. 5 and 9 minutes to eat their meal. Think about that. Think about that if you are a second grader with a loose tooth and what that means trying to eat an apple, right? What that means in practice, and we've seen this from the research, is that students eat their entrees, because if you were choosing, like, are you gonna eat like your sandwich or your orange, and you have 5 minutes, you're gonna pick your sandwich because that's what's gonna fuel you, right? And so more fruits and vegetables get wasted when students don't have enough time to eat their meals. And one of the things that we've seen with School Meals for All is we now have more students participating. That's exactly what we wanted to see, because so many students who were hungry were getting left out. But that it's also meant longer lunch lines. So it's compounded this problem we already had of inadequate time to eat. So time to eat is one thing I'd ask us to look at, particularly how much time kids have to actually finish their meal when we're thinking about food waste. And then there are also a lot of great strategies that districts already have in place to address this issue. Things like share tables, where you didn't finish that whole uneaten apple, that's fine. You put it on a share table and maybe a student can get a second piece of fruit that day, right? So there are ways that districts are addressing food waste. There was a recent law around food recovery, which is rescuing that whole uneaten food for distribution at food banks or to other people in need. So I think there's a lot of great things schools are doing to address food waste. I think there's more that could be done, and more support sort of on the time to eat and other policies that could help move the needle on that? Great question. That was a long response. I'm sorry.
Then we have another question from Victoria. In efforts to provide a healthier meals, my school serves a certain amount of fruit. Oop, the chat moved. Amounts of fruit and vegetables every school day. Trouble is oftentimes the kids don't want fruit. Are there ways to handle this so we can lessen food waste?
Absolutely. I think there are a number of different things here. One is offer versus serve, right? So that is a provision where you must offer all 5 meal components, the milk, the grain, the meat or meat alternate, a fruit, and a vegetable. But students just have to take 3 of those 5 components, one of which has to be a fruit or vegetable. So, okay, they don't want fruit that day, they can still take the veggie. So doing offer versus serve is huge. That's one way. I think another way is thinking about how you're preparing those fruits. So things like slicing up citrus, slicing up an orange can make a huge difference. I had one school site tell me like, oh, we offered whole oranges. Kids didn't really eat them. We sliced them up and the consumption doubled, right? So things like that. I've seen schools do really creative things with toppings, sauces, dips, etc., spices, right? Like that can also help with consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables, roasting vegetables to put it on the salad bar. So there are a whole lot of things to think about in terms of increasing that. And then also like there was this one district, no one knew what an Asian pear was. It wasn't something super common. None of the kids had tried it before. They had 4 kids take Asian pear. And then they did a taste test. And the next day, 100+ kids took the Asian pear, right? So offering a taste test, offering a sort of a low stress, low barrier way for students to try some of the fruits and vegetables, especially if they're unfamiliar, can be a great way to increase consumption as well. Okay, I'm seeing a +1 here for cut up fruits and vegetables, tahine. Yes, exactly.
I think it's also useful to try to enlist kids in reducing waste. I visited a summer camp when I was doing the research for Free for All, and they had what they called the ORT report. And every day they collected all those scraps and weighed them, all the uneaten food, and charted it on a big graph on the wall. And everybody was encouraged to try to help that amount go down by only taking what you were going to eat. Now, I know there are constraints in school food, but kids, I think our culture has moved away from the norms about not wasting food that are important for in our world. So enlist the kids if you can.
Good suggestion. Okay, I want to make sure we have enough time for Janet. I think we have time for maybe one more question if anyone else has any final questions for Abby. Okay, well, Abby, thank
¿Cómo
you.
hacer para las comidas, disculpa, para las comidas sobrantes durante el día de que se sirve el almuerzo? ¿Es posible? ¿Cómo se evitaría ese tipo de desperdicio cuando es grande?
She's wondering, so at the end of the day, like after the food has been served, how to, like maybe ways to avoid the waste that's left over.
Mm.
Okay, can I say something about it?
Yes, please.
For our school, because we serve in a high school, and I'm the lead of the high school, what I usually do is I call for the attendance in the morning, and based on the attendance, I know how much that I have to prep. That way I don't waste that much. I try to prepare the items that I know kids love it. Like if it's like today that it was a chicken Alfredo. I know that they love chicken Alfredo. I know that they love spicy chickens. Besides different items like Today we have a hummus, and we do have a Caesar salads. So I still prep Caesar salads, but I focus more on the items that I know that they like. That way we don't have a lot of waste at the end of the day. For the question that she has, I believe we have to know our kids which items they like more, which day of the week we have to prep 900 meals, and which day of the week we have to prep 800, because we know that on Fridays our attendance goes down. So why are we going to prep 900 if we know that every Friday we only have 750 kids?
I love that. That's so smart, right? You're learning about your kids' preferences, checking the attendance every day. That's so smart. Thanks, Hilda.
Yeah, great idea. Okay, well, Abby, thank you so much. If you don't mind stopping your sharing, and then Janet, I could pass it over to you. I know you'll be talking about free meals for all more broadly.
Okay, good. Well, I want to start by congratulating you. And do we have the Colorado people in the group now?
I just messaged Natalie and they are just wrapping up, so they should be on here momentarily. So she said to go ahead and get started without them.
Okay, so I will do that. So I just want to begin by congratulating you. This is such an important project to really not just transform the food in your individual schools, but also the reputation, if you will, the image of school food. The work that you're doing is so important to our future efforts to get public policy that really supports school food and supports providing the kind of school food that you all are working on. So thank you for taking the time to be involved in this and the energy and effort. And again, congratulations. I'm going to try and put some of what Abby told you about the recent changes, kind of the pandemic and thereafter, into a little longer historical context. I was born a year before the National School Lunch Act, which was in 1946. So it's, been part of my life the whole time. And I need to see a show of hands for how many of you have worked in school food in a situation where it was not free for all? How many of you worked within the 3-tier system? Okay, I see some hands up. If you don't have your picture on the screen, can you hit the react and response little hands up thing? Okay, so enough of you that you have some sense of the downside, the limits of the old 3-tier system. I'd like to say that free meals for all, free school food for all, is not a new idea. Way back in 1946, at the very first National Conference of School Food Service State Directors, the keynote speaker, who was the chair of the National Committee to Support the Public Schools, told the assembled directors, "The present form of school lunch movement is only the beginning. What we must aim for is a gradual evolution toward a free hot midday meal for every child." If you'll note that she didn't mention breakfast. The idea of serving breakfast at school hadn't really come up in public discourse at that point, and that she focused on a hot meal, which we've outgrown the necessity of her saying it should be hot. But it's interesting both because of the support and because she imagined a gradual progression, gradualism. For its first quarter century, the program operated with an across-the-board subsidy in cash and another in commodities that basically made school meals affordable for many families. There was no reimbursement from the federal government for meals served free. Schools were supposed to serve meals free to children who they deemed too poor to pay, but there were no standards. There were no federal eligibility levels. It was kind of up to the local school. And so, as you can imagine, the poorer schools had fewer parents who could pay the price for school meals, and therefore there was less to work with, so fewer kids received free meals. And that kind of caught up with people. in the late 1960s. The 60s were the decade that was marked by civil rights struggle and a growing national awareness of poverty and legislation called the War on Poverty. And as part of that, a group of national women's organizations undertook a study of school meals, about school meal participation, participation being the word that I think rings loudest for many food service professionals, and found, shockingly, that the meal program was not meeting the needs of the nation's poorest kids. It was fine in the suburbs that had been built for the baby boomers after World War II, but it was not reaching the kids who were poorest. So we got big reforms, 1969, 70, 71, in those years. They changed the whole structure of financing school meals so that the federal government agreed to reimburse schools for meals served free to children whose families met federal uniform eligibility standards. This was the era of big national struggles over the role of the federal government in education in general, in segregation and desegregation. This was the turf wars over whether we were going to ever become one nation. And the program changed dramatically. It began to reach many, many more of the nation's poorest children, but along the way, a fair number of the so-called full price students, which is always a misnomer. Okay, there's always a per capita subsidy or a per meal subsidy for the paying kids as well as for kids who receive their meals free or at reduced price. Actually, two subsidies, one in cash and one in commodities. But it changed the image of the program so that as more and more poor kids participated, it began to be regarded as a program for poor kids. So the stigma started to grow. I will say that when participation in a program is based on family income, we call, policy people call that a means test. If you have the means to purchase something, then you shouldn't get it free. And schools are the wrong places to administer a means test. For the one thing, schools want everybody to participate. They want all parents to be involved with their kids' education. And they want the school to be a community, good schools I'm talking about. And so it's kind of contrary to their ethos to be sorting people out by parents' education, but also they're not set up to do it. I mean, agencies that do this full time, welfare departments, we used to call them TANF, SNAP, they have skills and procedures for doing this. Schools don't. And so the error rate in household application for free or reduced price meals was very, very high, 1 in 5, 20%. That's not an acceptable error rate. So this generated a lot of critique, as you can imagine. And people, particularly people like yourselves, school food service professionals, began asking Congress to do something about the downside of these federal reimbursements for kids who were officially poor. And the then food service, National Food Service Professionals Organization, which was called the American Food Service Association before it changed its name to the School Nutrition Association, led a campaign to get the Department of Agriculture and Congress to figure out alternate means. So I just want to summarize the three big complaints, besides the ridiculous amounts of paperwork, that critics of the three-tier system had. And one was that it excluded children who were in real need because they set a uniform national eligibility standard, but economic conditions and wages and costs of living vary tremendously from community to community. So right now, in the parts of the country that don't have the benefit of California, Maine, and the other 7 states that have statewide universal free school meals, and in schools that are not covered by the community eligibility program that we'll get to in a minute, For a mom and 2 kids, a household of 3, you cannot get free meals if your income is above $34,645 a year. So think about the people you know trying to support a family of 3 on one income. That's a very low threshold. And you can't even get the reduced price meals if your income exceeds 49,303. So those eligibility standards, which might be appropriate in some low cost of living communities, exclude many children in real need. Secondly, it deters participation by kids who are eligible, by the paying kids and by kids who are eligible for free or reduced price, because of stigma, shame, bullying, and bureaucracy. It plays right into adolescent anxieties about the need to establish your identity. You don't want to have your identity be a free luncher. And it costs money. It erodes the program by diverting time and attention and resources from the effort to provide healthy, tasty school food, what you've been talking about, what you do. And it costs money for software and hardware systems. And it's a huge waste from a social accounting point of view. So I'm pretty sure that I'm preaching to the choir here. I have actually seldom met a school food professional who didn't support universal free school meals as the optimal way to do this. But there's always been an opposition, not, as I say, not among school food service professionals, but among decision makers, particularly in Congress. And the opposition usually says, well, universal would be nice, but we can't afford it. It costs too much money, or that it's not good for families to receive government handouts. So it takes us back to the gradualism that we're talking about. How did we get from this well-intentioned but really not benign 3-tier system to universal free school meals in 9 states now, statewide. And it started with pressure on Congress to reduce the paperwork burden. And in 1989, this Congress required the Secretary of Agriculture to create some pilot programs to test alternate means. And one of the things they tested was something called direct certification, where if families were participating in Medicaid or in SNAP or in TANF or in some other programs, those agencies that are set up to run a means test would notify the schools of the eligibility. In 1992, the American School Food Service Association started its Universal Vision campaign, and they got the Senate to pass a resolution requiring the Secretary of Agriculture to report on these experiments. And that became very important when school meals began to make headlines during the Obama administration. The focus, of Let's Move and Michelle Obama's involvement was on the quality of meals, on the standards for fruit and vegetables. When I was doing my research for Free for All, I ran into many monochromatic meals. A golden serve roll was the bread, and corn was the most popular vegetable, and potatoes, because the standards that existed did not specify green vegetables or red vegetables or any of the common things that we use to distinguish among the nutrient qualities of vegetables. Okay, so that period when Michelle Obama was kind of leading the campaign against childhood obesity and trying to raise consciousness about healthy eating and what have you, some folks behind the scenes got together and put a provision in the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, that was the Child Nutrition Reauthorization for 2010, that provided that schools that met certain quantitative standards in terms of the percentage of kids who were direct certified could feed all the kids for free, and be reimbursed at the free rate for there was a formula, but this is the community eligibility program. And you used it in California and in Colorado, if those folks are around, to great effect to offer meals to all children in many schools, but not all schools. The experience of being able to do it for all kids in all schools came, as Abby showed us, during the pandemic. And we are, all of us, I live in the state of New York. We recently became the 9th state to commit to universal free school meals. And we're a big catch because we have a lot of kids in school in New York State. But we really are standing on the shoulders of California and Maine, the second state to bring this about. Once you had created the community eligibility program, then scholars, researchers could come in and take a look at what's the effect on schools of feeding everyone. And that's when they began to find improved academic achievement. We already knew that hunger interferes with academic achievement and that feeding kids raises it. But what was the effect of making the meal available to everyone? So improved academic achievement, increased participation, and an improved school climate with less bullying and less fighting and more respect and better feelings, more feelings of safety. So the experimental phase, if you want to call it that, the community eligibility program, allowed us to conduct a lot of the research that then you folks in California, folks like Amy, used to persuade state legislatures to make universal a statewide commitment. So there's been a cycle here. We hoped that that at the end of the pandemic, we would get universal free school meals statewide, because a lot of people who had thought it wasn't possible now saw what could be done. We didn't win that one, but we did begin to launch. We did begin to spread, what shall I say, the gospel of statewide universal free school meals. So that's the evolution through policy histories. And I have to say that there is still a Universal School Meals Program Act that's technically in place, and Senator Sanders has it. Many of us still dream about a federal commitment to universal free school meals. We think it's clearly demonstrated that this is the better way to feed kids at school. But meanwhile, we face a lot of setbacks, and we need to mobilize you and your friends and your fellow employees and your students to defend the community eligibility program, because for kids in states who don't have what you have in California, and Colorado also has, that program is threatened by the current administration, and it's threatened by the proposed cuts to the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, used to call it food stamps, is one of the main ways that a school's eligibility for the community eligibility program is established. And if a lot of people lose their SNAP benefits, their kids will also lose an automatic entitlement to free school meals, which will make the program less and less financially sustainable, feasible for local schools. So I want to ask you to continue the advocacy that Abby described for more investment in kitchens and other necessary equipment, for more farm to school, for more engagement of farmers and local food system. But I also want you to turn some of your attention to protecting SNAP. There are several bills in Congress now trying to undo the SNAP cuts that were part of the big, beautiful budget reconciliation back. So we have a big challenge ahead of us. This is one of those turning points. As the SNAP cuts go into effect, school meals will be more important than ever to the health and well-being of the children. but we also need to try to recoup those cuts, to undo those cuts, so that people who are in need in our country have access to food both at school and through their homes in the grocery stores, and that we maintain the eligibility standards that have enabled so many schools to participate in community eligibility. I think that's where I'll pull this to a close and open it for questions if there are any. But I just want to say again that there is no more effective voice about school food policy than the people who are on the front lines doing the work and the kids themselves. I hope your school has some kind of student participation, a student food service council, a committee, some kind of opportunity for school food professionals and workers to interact with the students around the menu, around their preferences. I was really struck by what you were saying in the chat about the food students like and how they like them, cut up apples, not whole apples, oranges. I hope your schools have opportunities for students to participate in that organized way. And if they don't, I hope you'll go home and start one. And then I hope you'll enlist those students. Their testimony moves legislators. So that's my message, is keep up the great work you've been doing in the public policy realm. Get involved with your own school and with others in your community that are working on these issues, because you make a difference every day in what you do with the students, but you can also make a difference in the public policy.
Thank you, Janet. Well, we are getting close to time, but I want to take a few questions if we have any. I see that Hilda has our first question in the chat. California was the first one and still has free breakfast and lunches for all kids, but can that change at any time or not if some districts are having dramatic budget deficits on our nutrition departments?
Okay, is Abby still here? Because she would know the specific. I don't think schools can. Oh, there you are, Abby. I think you should answer that.
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but I will say School Meals for All is put permanently in statute in California. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to go and advocate for increased funding to account for increased participation in every budget cycle, but it should not go away. I think this question is also about the SNAP angle and the big beautiful bill, perhaps, right? And all of those cuts that we're going to see to directly certified students, which will hurt the federal funding for school meals. And a lot of that is still uncertain. And so we have to see like how much the state is able to then increase funding for our school meal program and how that all plays out. You know, the thing about some of these cuts, some of them are going into effect immediately. Some of the SNAP cuts are going to go into effect over a number of years. So there's a lot of time still. And I think we're all still trying to figure out how much our families are going to be impacted by those cuts and what that's going to mean for direct certification numbers.
One place where the fear of budget shortfalls is making a difference is in those yellow states that you saw in the map, what states where there has been healthy school meals for all legislation introduced. A lot of states are backing off from it's harder to get a conversion. We worried in New York even, but it went through and we will defend it. But it's going to be a tough period for getting new commitments to a universal. Hawaii is considering it seriously, I think. So, but yeah, as there are so many cuts coming, but the thing that imposes additional administrative costs for SNAP on the states, and then a portion of the benefit costs if their error rates are over certain levels, that is going to threaten state budgets. There's no question about it.
Thank you. Well, we are close to time. So, Abby and Janet, thank you both. I know, Janet, we didn't have enough time for as many questions for you. So, apprentices, if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to email them to me. And Jen, if it's okay with you, I could share them over email with you as well.
Right. And can I put my,
Oh, yeah, go ahead and put your email in the chat as well.
that's what I'm trying to do. Okay, let me read it. Yeah, sometimes I put 3 P's in here. No, okay. I mean, there are 3 total, but anyway, it's been a pleasure. I'm so glad to see this program thriving.
Well, thank you, Janet. And also, Abby, thank you to you as well. We will let you two go, apprentices. I know we're at time. I'm going to just quickly go through some housekeeping and then we can let you all go too as well. But have a great rest of your evening. Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, quick housekeeping. Let's take 30 seconds. Just a reminder that our next virtual learning session is October 8th, so 2 Wednesdays from now. And then just another reminder, as usual, to complete your reflection assignment for this virtual learning session, which will be due in a week. The final reminder I have is we are approaching the end of September, and I know we went through this on the orientation, but in September, you should see a task at the very end of the month to submit your harassment training certificate. So just a reminder to please submit that. If you have a previous one from the pre-apprenticeship or from any other job you've ever done, and as long as the certificate's still valid and hasn't expired, you're more than welcome to just submit an old version of the certificate. If you've never done harassment training, there's a link in that task in Moodle to be able to complete that for free. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or Juliana. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a great rest of their evening, and we'll see you all soon.